Okay, Filene, perfect question, Filene. What vitamins, minerals are needed for vision that may not be being absorbed when celiac? So I mentioned vitamin A, also mentioned zinc. And again, if we're talking about the top 5, I just kind of perused through them, but vitamin D, iron, zinc, B12, and omega-3. I've got data, 20 years of clinical data. These are the top 5 nutrient deficiencies and individuals with gluten sensitivity who are gluten exposed, okay? Now beyond that, there are, I say these are the top 5. This is just statistically the top 5. I see it all over the map. When we test for people's nutritional levels, we looked at 40 different essential nutrients that you should be aware of. It's important if you're gluten sensitive or celiac that your doctor's measuring all of them, because it could be any one of these 5. It could be any one of some of these primary nutrients. It could be other ones as well. So don't think of it as just limiting yourself to testing only zinc or vitamin A, right? It's probably best to look at them all. Asita wants to know, any role for gluten or autoimmunity in visual snow? I'm not convinced brain activity abnormalities indicate the primary cause is the brain. I've seen cases where people saw visual disturbances, visual snow, eye floaters, all very, very common. And I've seen in every one of those different cases, I've seen those things go away clinically speaking. I haven't seen any research where you've got actual ophthalmologists or other eye doctors doing research studies on gluten sensitive or celiac patients to determine whether or not there's like a valid connection. But I can give you case report after case report where we've seen that happen. Can gluten cause digestive problems or constipation? Wow, hi Helena, that's a no-brainer, really. Glad you asked the question, but absolutely. Gluten's notorious for causing both. I like this story. Nancy says, 2 years true gluten-free diet. I had many floaters, all gone. I see my ophthalmologist at the end of May. Can't wait for him to see the improvements of my eyes. I can't either. Make sure that you let him know what you changed, because hopefully that'll cue him in to helping maybe potentially help somebody else who's coming in and having a problem as well. Let's see. My son's telling me that ancient grains like einkorn won't hurt me and are actually good for me. Your son's wrong if you're gluten sensitive, Star. If you're gluten sensitive, einkorn, ancient grain or not, it's got gluten in it. It's going to damage you. So in that regard, if we're talking about gluten sensitivity, you wouldn't want to do that. Sue, I wake up at 3:30 with tingly fingers or achy upper arm. Can this be from gluten or dairy or milk? I am gluten sensitive but have not given up all other, I'm going to assume you mean grains yet. So if you're gluten sensitive and you're still getting grain in your diet, Sue, that's the absolute very first thing I would do. The other thing is, you're waking up at 3:30 with tingling fingers in an upper achy arm. Look at your sleep position. Some people, when they sleep, they're lying down like so, and their arms are bent, and the anatomy is different in everyone, but you've got nerves that run through. You've got what's called a cubital tunnel here. You've got your carpal tunnel down here. And some positions will cramp that nerve or compress that nerve, and you'll wake up in the middle of the night with tingling and achiness because the positioning, the physical anatomical positioning of the body. So that's a possibility too. And that being said, gluten and dairy have been shown to cause neuropathy and neurological damage, including carpal tunnel syndrome. So, that's something you definitely want to get your diet switched out and changed up, be 100% true gluten-free. 6 bouts of iritis. Could it be gluten related? It could be, absolutely, not a doubt in my mind about it. So, proof is in the pudding. Can other things cause iritis? Sure they can. There's infectious microorganisms, there's chemical exposures. A lot of other things can affect the eyes. I've actually had patients allergic to, their contact lenses directly. I mean, some people are allergic to the ingredients that the lens that they're using is actually made out of, so creating a lot of eye inflammation, different types of inflammatory conditions of the eye, all because they were wearing a lens that they were reactive to. I've seen people be allergic to their compound, not to their compound, but to their eye solutions for their lenses. So the droppers they put in the eyes and the droppers that they clean their lenses with, they're actually allergic to, and then they're putting them in their eye directly. I've seen a lot of that. That's why it's such an important thing to do. If you've gone gluten-free and you really are doing the diet right, and I mean the true gluten-free diet, I'm not talking about the traditional gluten-free diet that it's not really all that good for you. And if you don't know what that means, go get a copy of No Grain, No Pain and read it, and come back to the show and you'll learn a lot more. But allergy response with chronic inflammation is very common, and so sometimes the allergy is to what you eat, and sometimes the allergy is to what you apply, what you put on, or what you put in your body. I've seen a little bit of all that mixed in together with different folks. Kathy, I think I may have addressed this, but she says her loved one has uveitis, and her labs, show that she has gene markers for ankylosing spondylitis. So that's what I was referring to earlier, the HLA-B27 gene marker. And it doesn't mean you have ankylosing spondylitis. It means you have an increased risk for the development, or greater likelihood for the development of that particular condition, which is linked to uveitis as well. Gellan and xanthan gum. Dahlia wants to know, could I talk about gellan and xanthan gum on the intestinal tract of people with ulcerative colitis? Gellan gum, not much. I mean, gellan gum is, in my experience, is a relatively safe gum, although any gum for somebody with colitis, inflammation of the intestines, large or small, gums are hard to digest. Yeah, so gums for somebody with an active inflammatory bowel disorder should, in my opinion, should be left out of the diet, and that includes all gums. And that's, again, it's because gums are hard to digest, they're hard to break down, and your gut's inflamed and it's already struggling with the food, so you don't want to put more on it than what it can handle. Now, if your gut is not inflamed and you don't have an active inflammatory bowel disorder, gellan gum should be okay. Xanthan gum, on the other hand, is typically it's made from corn, so it's not one that I would recommend for folks. I'd recommend trying to avoid that at all costs, especially if you know you're gluten sensitive. Oh, I like this. So Craig says, hey, been gluten and grain and dairy free for about 4 weeks. Is it possible to get a stye in the eye along with mouth ulcers as a sort of withdrawal? Yes. It absolutely is, Christy, a possibility that gluten withdrawal can occur in that way. I've actually seen that. Less the stye and more the mouth ulcers. Remember, too, there's also a stye can be indicative of infection, as can mouth ulcers. So it's possible that going gluten-free for 4 weeks, but you also picked up an infection around the face, and it may have nothing to do with gluten. So both of those things could be true. It's probably a smart idea to follow up with your doc if it's really bothering you. Should people with inflammatory bowel disease avoid nightshades? No, but since we were just talking about uveitis and we were talking about uveitis, and we were also talking about HLA-B27. So that marker HLA-B27 I was referring to earlier, if you have that and you are positive for HLA-B27, it's best that you avoid nightshades because you're more likely to react to the solenoids, which are chemical compounds found in nightshades, if you have that positivity for HLA-B27. And this is why a lot of people with rheumatological disease, will avoid nightshades. It's why nightshades are a common food group that are recommended people with autoimmune pain avoid. It's one of the reasons why we generalize and have people avoid the nightshades on the no grain, no pain diet as well. Let's see here. I have Hashimotos, and I believe it causes eye inflammation, also so painful, and the swelling causes pain. Yeah, Faith, that's exactly right. That's what I was talking about earlier. in terms of the eye manifestations of hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. So how does having had cataract surgery impact potential retinopathy? It's not that having the surgery contributes to retinopathy unless you just had a really bad surgery job, or unless you have just a general consensus toward inflammation in your eye already, and then the surgery just sets up the stage for the healing post-surgical. Because remember, all surgeries, what are they? They're scheduled trauma. It's what they are. I mean, some surgeries are necessary and some are helpful, but at the end of the day, they're scheduled trauma. And if you do trauma to an already inflamed area, then you could potentiate and increase the inflammation in an area, running the risk for greater amounts of damage. It's one of the reasons why, if you're doing any kind of surgery at all, it's very important to be nutritionally supported on the front side of that surgery and on the back side of that surgery. And some of the best things you can do pre and post surgery, a couple of supplements I'll mention, because well, in my opinion, these are super critical. Let's change our color here. There we go. So if you're talking about before surgery, what your doctors don't want you to take are things that thin your blood. So that would be, so don't take, omega-3 fat, and things like ginkgo, right? Ginkgo thins your blood, and aspirin, if you're an aspirin user, aspirin can thin your blood. So don't take those things right before your surgery. Your doctor doesn't want your blood to be too thin where it creates a problem, okay? Now besides those things, what do we take to support the surgery and to support the recovery? In my opinion, one of the best things you can take is L-glutamine. Very, very helpful. I've got years of experience using that pre-surgically and post-surgically, as a matter of fact. So this is, pre. Where this L-glutamine before and after, in my experience, the surgery and to support the recovery, really accelerates the healing. And when when I was in the hospital doing nutrition, we would put our patients on glutamine, and we would see them heal 2-3 times faster than patients who weren't using the L-glutamine. So very, very helpful, very crucial amino acid for recovery. Other amino acids for recovery are the BCAAs. BCAAs, that stands for branched chain amino acids, valine, leucine, and isoleucine. These are all 4 of these amino acids, glutamine and the branched chain aminos, are important for the repair of the collagen structures that the doctor is going to cut through to get to wherever they're going to do that surgery. The other thing that I find is vitamin C. Very, in my opinion, it's non-negotiable. And vitamin C is, we're talking about pre and post, 5 grams to do that. So those are, again, just some real simple things. We could go into a long detailed list, but I think these cover both pre and post surgically. And if your surgery includes antibiotics, so if you were IV antibiotic, or if it was dental surgery and they wanted you on an antibiotic, in my opinion, you need to be on a strong probiotic to recoup from what the antibiotic is going to do to you. So you want to support your natural microbiome recovery with a good probiotic, and preferably, we're looking at about 85 plus billion CFUs, and that stands for colony forming units. That's just the quantity of probiotic. If most over-the-counter probiotics are in the millions, not in the billions. And so if you're under 85 billion, or if you're not in that neighborhood, it's like spitting on a forest fire. You're not going to do a whole lot of good. And then with L-glutamine, it's 2 to 3 grams per day. And this is best done on an empty stomach. The others doesn't matter, but glutamine really best done on an empty stomach. Branched chain amino acids, 4 to 5 grams a day. And again, this is pre and post, so coming up to the surgery 1 week before, and after the surgery a couple of weeks post-surgically. And just depending on how you're recovering, I sometimes will take people up to 6 weeks So this is just what I do, within my practice, but these are strategies that we use nutritionally just to support that person's ability to heal and recover. So going back to, the question about eye surgery and an increased risk for inflammation, again, I know that's not exactly the question that was asked, but that's something I would recommend there. Itchy eyes and watery, what products would you recommend for that and for how long? So if you've got watery, itchy eyes, Shanquilla, you probably have there's probably some kind of an allergy, and that could be air related, so airborne allergy, or it could be a food. I've seen this a lot, food responses creating watery, teary, itchy eyes. So in either case, so if it's food, obviously avoidance is the biggest thing that you can do, and that helps kind of navigate that. But if it's airborne, and let's say it's like oak pollen or ragweed or something like that, it's not much you can do. And what you're experiencing is most likely a histamine response. So if that's the case, that's what teary, watery, itchy eyes is generally. It's histamine. So there's a product I recommend called Ease, and as a general rule of thumb, you can take 4 caps a day. It's a pretty helpful. What it does is it's got things like quercetin and vitamin C and nettle, and it will help stabilize the mast cells. Those are the cells in your body that release histamine. It'll stabilize their membrane, and it will support a healthy histamine response, and it might give you some benefit in that regard. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. How much vitamin A do you need? Okay, yeah, great question. Depends. If you're deficient in vitamin A, severely so, 25,000 IU for a couple of months should be enough to get you back on track. Now, here's Star. I'm going to caveat here. Do not do this unless you're being monitored. So make sure you're being monitored by a doctor, because one of the things that can happen, with vitamins, it's very rare that any vitamin poses a risk for toxicity. Vitamin A can pose a risk for toxicity. That's actually quite rare. If you do this for 2 months, you're probably not going to run into an issue, but there are some different caveats where you'd have to be really careful. Let's say you have a liver condition. Okay, and your liver can't handle that metabolism effectively, and this works your liver too hard and it worsens your liver. This is why you want that to be monitored. Now, beyond that, you could go down to 12,000 units a day, and that's pretty safe to get a vitamin A deficiency corrected. Again, time frame would be probably pretty comparable in that regard, but if we're talking about pure vitamin A, we're not talking about carotenoids, because sometimes on supplements, you'll see this term, it'll say vitamin A as, and then it will say beta carotene or carotenoids or something along that route. And that's not vitamin A. This is pre-vitamin A. And if you have inflammatory bowel disease, or you have some other kind of gut problem where your gut's not working, your gut doesn't have the capacity to convert that carotenoid into vitamin A, and so that means that type or that supplement won't probably work for you. And a lot of times with inflammatory bowel disease, we have to use vitamin A if we're going to get it really, truly corrected. Let's see here. Does bee pollen contain gluten? No. It can be probably cross-contaminated with gluten depending on where it's manufactured, but no, as a general rule, bee pollen does not contain gluten. Can you please talk about SEERS? Seems, you talk about chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Seems my mold. Yeah, I mean, Donna, that'll be a topic we've done some shows on mold. I would encourage you to go back. Maybe we can put some links up in the feed for you to go back and check those out. But it's too broad, it's too big of a topic to dive into tonight in the time we have left. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it. Thanks for the suggestion. So Dahlia says, I've heard that ulcerative colitis can progress to eye disease like uveitis. Why would this occur? Malnutrition, predominantly malnutrition. With any type of ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, gastritis, what you run the risk of is malabsorption of vitamins and minerals, right? And so that vitamin mineral deficiency can cause eye disease. Can having hypothyroid cause problem with blurry vision or cloudy addition? Yes, it can. And I mentioned that earlier, but definitely hypothyroidism can cause clouded vision and blurry vision. Can gluten cause photophobia and light sensitivity? Yes, I've seen it. That is one of the things I've seen it cause. Now, more specifically, it's not the gluten necessarily per se that causes that. Gluten, it goes back to the nutritional deficiencies that gluten can contribute to, but gluten, particularly vitamin B2 deficiency, causes photophobia, which is sensitivity to bright lights. And so this is like, if you're this person, you're the one that's always in your shades, right? Future's so bright, you got to wear shades, only future's not bright because you got a vitamin B2 deficiency. Okay, so if you're always in shades, you probably have photophobia. You might consider vitamin B2. Also, iron deficiency can do this as well. So the two, between B2 and iron, very common nutritional deficiencies associated with gluten that lead to that phobic component toward light. Oh man, the questions are everywhere. Let's see, vegans. No, that's not a question. Yeah, so I like that. So many people vitamin A deficient because you're right. They're vitamin A deficient because they're told to avoid saturated fats. So things like egg and the yolk, they're told to avoid that. They're told to avoid things like liver. Like there's a big component. There's a big kind of movement against beef and against animal-based products, and liver's one of those. And unfortunately, that movement is as popular as it is because I think it's to the detriment of most people. Is it possible to have falsely high numbers for hemoglobin A1C, minus 5.6, but I don't eat sugar, I eat low carb, 0 grain, legumes, dairy, I do intermittent fasting? I don't get it. It is possible to have a false elevation in hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C is not the end-all be-all to measuring blood sugar. And so on that note, if you're really curious about it, so hemoglobin A1C is a part, it's a piece of the puzzle. You also want your insulin, you want to measure your glucose, fasting glucose, as a part of what's happening here. This by itself, a lot of doctors have just gone because insurance pays for that test. So a lot of doctors have just gone to just measuring that. A lot like the way a lot of doctors have just gone to measuring TSH for measuring the entirety of the thyroid, which in my opinion is unfortunate. But insulin and glucose, C-peptide, which measures how well your pancreas is producing insulin. You want to look at pancreatic function. You can also measure certain nutrients are very critical for this. So like the biggest one here where you have false high hemoglobin A1C is chromium. If you're doing everything right, your chromium levels are probably too low. Try you a picture here. If this is your blood, and this is glucose floating in your blood. That glucose has to leave your blood to get into your cell to make ATP in your cell. So if this is a cell, right? But in order for that to happen, your pancreas has to produce insulin. And so it throws that insulin into your bloodstream, and then the insulin has to bind to an antenna on the surface of your cell called an insulin receptor. And so that binding is very, very critical to open a door that allows that glucose to come into the cell to make that ATP or that energy. So this insulin receptor, though, you can't make it if your chromium levels are too low. So a lot of times what will happen is people with low chromium will have a problem with blood sugar, even though they eat well, they exercise well. So, checking the chromium is very important. Also, the zinc is important. Zinc is the centerpiece that holds insulin together. Niacin helps chromium do its job to produce the insulin receptor. So there's certain nutrient deficiencies that even in the perfect diet, perfect exercise, if you have them, they'll cause a skewance upward of your hemoglobin A1C level, because good healthy hemoglobin A1C is really at 5 or less. And so I would agree with you that, in that range that you're in, that's probably a little bit too high. Let's see. Caffeine raises adrenal. I don't see a question in that. Is salmon a good source of vitamin A? Salmon liver and cod liver are great sources of vitamin A. What medical degree would I suggest for someone with a holistic view? I wouldn't, because if you get a medical degree, you're going to have the holistic beat out of you for 4 years. The doctors that I know that are medical doctors that come out of medical school, they practiced 15 years, found out that it was the way that medicine is practiced today doesn't really help people get better. It's not holistic, and that's why they went toward kind of more of a functional medicine, holistic view. But they didn't learn any of what they're currently doing in medical school. If you want to learn the opposite of, this is my opinion, if you want to learn the opposite of what to do with chronic degenerative inflammatory illness, then a medical degree is a perfect right up your alley. But if you want to learn the right things to do, you're not going to get that in medical school. So you've got to, that's postgraduate work, heavy postgraduate work, nutritional work, biochemistry work. Where can we naturally get copper from, or is it best to supplement? Both. You could get it from supplements. You could get it from food. Nuts are rich in copper. Organ meats are rich in copper. Oysters are rich in copper. We've got an entire show on copper. If you want to go back and watch it, we talk really, really in depth if you want to learn more about that. Let's see. So myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disease. We didn't really talk about that, but I'm glad you're bringing that up, Nancy. So what happens in myasthenia gravis is it can cause the eyes to droop, but it can also cause the eye muscles to get weak with time. I've seen a number of cases in my practice of myasthenia come to see me, and I've seen them go into remission. So myasthenia gravis is where you have an autoimmune condition against the acetylcholine, which is the main neurochemical that helps with muscles actually having a neurological message helping them contract or relax. So like in the case of the eyes, you'll get lid lag with myasthenia gravis. So the lids of the eyes will lag down because when you're awake, your eye muscles have to be actively on all the time to keep the eye. But with myasthenia gravis, this autoimmune effect deteriorates the ability of acetylcholine to stimulate the muscles of the lids to stay open, so they start to droop. We also start to get vision disruption, because one of the other aspects of vision is you have a couple different sets of muscles. You've got cranial nerves that feed the eyes and how they move, left, right, laterally, up, down, etc. But you've also got muscles that attach to the lens directly that help the lens contract and expand. And so those muscles can be affected with myasthenia gravis as well. So a lot of vision issues can crop up with myasthenia. My experience, gluten-free diet is a great place to start, Nancy, with that. Floaters in the eyes once in a while are not an issue, but if your eyes are chronically, floaters where you're having a hard time seeing, the honest truth is we don't know with 100% certainty, but what we think is those floaters are proteins, particularly they're glycated proteins. So they're proteins that are coated in sugar, and they're damaging your eye. So we'll see a lot of diabetics will report floaters, aggressive quantities of floaters, and this is why we change the diet, we change the glycation, we control the degree of floaters. A few here and there, not a big deal, but that chronic high level of floaters, that's a problem. Can gluten indirectly cause, what does that say, eye bags, even if we get enough sleep? Yes, it can. You have bags underneath the eyes. The bags underneath the eyes are oftentimes a sign of allergy, that puffiness, that swelling and edema in the eye itself, and that can be gluten. It can also be other food sensitivities. Oh, so somebody's asking about fat deposits in the eyes. There's different types of deposits. There's, different types of fatty deposits that can occur in the eyes, and I've seen that be the case in people with choline deficiency, Nikki. Choline is like a B vitamin, and it helps the liver properly metabolize fat, but choline deficiency is common to cause fatty deposition, plaquages in the eye. There's also something called xanthelasmas. There's lipid formations around the eye that can occur in individuals who have fat metabolism issues. It's not necessarily a cholesterol thing, although many people try to blame it on that. It really has more to do with how your body's metabolizing fat. We'll also see lipomas, which are like little fatty tumors that form under the skin that can occur in these types of situations. How much vitamin D, E, and omega? It just depends. If you're not deficient in any of them, omega, I like to see people get with concentrations of EPA and DHA about 2 grams a day of omega-3 fatty acids. If you're talking about vitamin D in a day, just generalized supplementation. If you're not deficient, anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 units is adequate. Now, some people may be dropping their jaws right now because they're thinking that's a super high mega dose. It's not. Vitamin E, depends, deficient or not, anywhere between 200 and 1,000 international units a day. Again, depending on what your needs are. So my mom has macular degeneration. I'm gluten sensitive. How can I avoid my eyes getting macular degeneration? You take care of your eyes. The best way to take care of your eyes from a macular degeneration standpoint is antioxidants, hands down. Ultimately, we're all going to age. What we can try to do is age gracefully instead of aging aggressively, right? And that aging gracefully requires diligence. It requires good sleep, good diet. It requires sunshine. It requires the stress management. It requires clean air, clean water, the fundamentals of life. So Nikki's asking about testing for vitamins and minerals. We use multiple different technologies, but one of the primary technologies we use, and it's very critical to do this, is lymphocyte proliferation. It's called lymphocyte proliferation. And so if your doctor's not talking about lymphocyte proliferation, run the other way, because whatever they're going to be measuring is going to give you a lot of inaccuracy, and it's not going to be super helpful, in my opinion. I'm not sure I understand your question, Helena. Can nutrition help the deterioration of vision as a consequence of long-time screen exposure? You're talking about like cell phones, TVs, that kind of thing. It can. Remember what that screen time does is it's the wrong kind of light, right? It's that blue light basically wearing and tearing your eyes. The best thing you can do is reduce your screen time exposure and take care of your antioxidant status within your eyes directly. I recommend for that, Helena, a formula called Focus, Focus. It's a great antioxidant formula designed specifically for the eyes, and it can be very, very supportive and very effective at keeping that antioxidant status up in your eye. Let's see, go down on the right just a little bit. I love that. So somebody's saying Maggie's saying diet stabilized my wet macular degeneration. Have not had a shot in 3 years after needing shots for 4 years. Diet has relieved all arthritic joint issues and pain, and diet has reversed incontinence. High five to you, Maggie. That is fantastic. I love when you guys share those awesome stories of diet changing you. Somebody's asking if the doctor that I worked at when I was in the VA hospital in the rheumatology department, did the doctor ever throw pins at me? Yeah. As a matter of fact, he threw pins, he threw books, he was a pretty hot fella. He was a genuine caring person. I don't want to be too hard on him, but he had a temper. He definitely had a temper. Would I recommend a particular brand of vitamin A? Question coming in by New York. Yes, go to Gluten Free Society and check out Ultra A. Maybe we can plug that link into into the feed for you here. Yeah, with vitamin A, again, I mentioned this earlier, Nancy, don't take beta carotene if you want true vitamin A. If you want to have pre-vitamin A, that's beta carotene. But if you want true vitamin A, you've got to take something like a retinol palmitate. What do I recommend for your husband's macular degeneration, which is not age-related? I'd probably say the same general things, Dahlia. I would say get him on a good antioxidant, a formula like Focus. Make sure his diet is where it needs to be. Like, those two are super critical. What kind of chromium? Polynicotinate. Chromium polynicotinate is one of the better forms of chromium to do that job. Is vasovagal syncope related to gluten and vitamin B deficiency? Yes to both. It's also related to chronic aggressive stress of any kind. What can be done for eyelid droop? Depends on what's causing it. If it's like a facial palsy type of issue, which is one of the things we're seeing right now in a lot of these vaccines, people developing facial palsies. If it's a true like neurological damage, you've got to figure out where that's coming from. So that means testing. So it just depends on what's causing your droop. Does vitamin D cause kidney stones? No, it does not cause kidney stones. That's myth. As a matter of fact, vitamin D deficiency causes kidney stones. How does Reuters Syndrome affect the bladder? Since I was talking about it, it causes an autoimmune inflammation within the bladder, damaging the ureter, making it more difficult to pee. What do I recommend for rheumatoid arthritis? No grain, no pain. It's where it's at. I wrote that book based on 20 years of experience working with patients who have chronic autoimmune arthritis, and there's no better diet for autoimmune arthritis than there's no greater starting point than no grain, no pain. Do the vitamin supplements reverse the cataracts or just stabilize them from getting worse? I've seen both. I've actually seen cases where cataracts actually went away. I know that most doctors will tell you that's impossible. That's my experience. I can share that with you. Can you take quercetin long-term or just a few months at a time? You can take it long-term. Quercetin's pretty safe. I mean, you get quercetin in green tea and apples and berries. It's found in a number of different foods, and if you're supplementing with it, it's certainly okay to take over longer periods of time. There's no recorded detrimental side effects of using quercetin long-term that have ever been published, to my knowledge. Substitution of wheat flour by almond flour be an issue for hormonal system? Would it be better to use another gluten-free flour? It depends. I mean, some people are allergic to almond flour, and some people, the almond flour is high in omega-6 fatty acids, so it promotes an inflammatory process if you're using a lot of it. So I always say navigate gluten-free flours lightly when you're initially going gluten-free, simply because you want to kind of get away from that and get a feel for what your body feels like being away from gluten without all the other interjections. Let's see, scroll on that left side. Can fibromyalgia cause eye issues? Lately my eyes are blurry at times and dry. I would say if you have fibromyalgia and you have eye issues, it's probably not your fibromyalgia causing the eye issues. It's probably something else entirely, or something maybe nutritionally related. Nightshades. What are nightshades? Nightshades are a family of fruits and vegetables, but the classic nightshades are your potato, like your white potato, not sweet potato, but white potato. Also tomatoes, eggplants, peppers are part of the nightshade family. Goji berries are part of the nightshade family. Tobacco is part of the nightshade family. So those are your main nightshades. How much can someone's vision fluctuate with changes in diet? Can it wax and wane? It can. I mean, I've seen it change as dramatically as I had somebody after a couple months. They had to go back to their optometrist and be refitted for their glasses because they went backward 2 prescriptions, meaning their eyesight improved that dramatically. So, it just depends on the individual, and it depends on what the eye or the vision problem is. And if it's even nutritionally related, because there are vision problems that are not nutritionally related as well. Let's keep going down. Been through optic neuritis, high positive ANA, and no other antibody markers. I'm HLA-DQ8 positive. Could gluten have caused this? Yes, it probably did cause it. HLA-DQ8 is a gluten genotype. It's not only a celiac marker, but it's also it's a marker that's now being identified by some researchers as a primary marker involved with gluten-induced neurological damage. And so that's what optic neuritis is. It's the nerve to the eye becoming damaged. Scroll down more. Can colloidal silver help for allergies? If so, can nasal Versin be sprayed for? Colloidal silver is not going to do much for allergies. Colloidal silver is more kind of a natural antibiotic. Where can I watch this? Where can I watch this video from the beginning? Sylvia, subscribe. It's the best thing you can do. And on that note, any of you who are not subscribed, head on over to glutenfreesociety.org. About halfway down the page, it says subscribe to the world's #1 gluten-free newsletter. That's me, right? Subscribe there. That's how you can watch all of our videos. We have more than 1,000 hours of videos that you can watch absolutely free. We put live shows on weekly. So if you're new and you're not super familiar, but you're enjoying and getting value from tonight's show, you can tap in that way just by subscribing. Let's see here. We got to wrap this up. Can a gluten-free diet help with Parkinson's? Yes, but it also sometimes can't. So it depends on what's causing the Parkinson's. I've seen cases of Parkinson's dramatically improve with a gluten-free diet. I've also seen them not because there were other issues that weren't being detected or weren't being identified. A lot of times with Parkinson's, heavy metal, things like aluminum play a big role in my experience in the onset or the development of diseases like Parkinson's. So make sure you ask your doctor about testing your aluminum levels as well. Let's see, scroll down on that left side. We'll take one or two more here. What do I think about cow's milk? Depends. I have cows on my farm, so I'm not opposed to it, but I'm really opposed to cow's milk in people with a newly diagnosed gluten issue, and depending on the type of milk that they're consuming, because the cow's milk from the grocery stores, in my opinion, that's not milk. It's called milk, but really what it is it's a cow under duress and under stress, being pumped full of hormones, being asked to milk 24/7. That would be the equivalent of how healthy would mother's breast milk be if mother were being forced into a quarantined area to basically pump milk all day under the influence of hormones and under the influence of foods that just cause severe obesity in that woman. That would be very unhealthy milk, and that's what I think about most cow's milk from the grocery store. Okay. Can gluten make one of the eyes start looking either bigger or smaller? It depends on what you're talking about, Dane. Without better clarity, when you say the eye being bigger or smaller, are you referring directly to the pupil dilating or contracting? Are you considering the eye, one eye is bulging, the other's not? I mean, there are different parameters to think about there. So it's, generally speaking, better clarity there might help me answer that. Okay, I think, boy, the questions are just coming and I just can't keep going, folks. I got to go home and eat. My wife's expecting me to come home at a decent hour. So thanks for sharing Monday evening with me. I hope you learned something. I hope you got some insight from tonight's show about sight and vision and gluten. And as always, hey, look, we're trying to save 100 million lives. You know our mission. And I can't do it without your help. Just like you come and you get my help every Monday night, I need you to share. I need you to share this information. If you know somebody struggling with eye problems and they're hitting a brick wall, share this video with them. Share this URL send this information to them. The more we share, the more we care, the more people we help, the more we can reach that mission of helping 100 million souls find their way in this very lost world of Alice in Wonderlandian-like times. So thanks for tuning in again. I wish you excellent health and a fantastic week. We'll see you next Monday night. Actually, we'll see you Wednesday night. I'll be doing a special show this Wednesday. I got a special guest. I'm not going to announce it tonight. You'll just have to show up. But you'll get an email if you're subscribed. And we got a special impromptu this Wednesday. Beyond that, I'll see you next Monday for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Have a great evening. Take care. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.